Blessed good night to one all. My name is Ramon Goodman. I'm your co-host tonight, along with Dr. Alleyne, and this is Dlp Tv, Honest Voices for the People. We have a robust show for you tonight. My guest tonight, well, it's going to be a conversation actually. My guest tonight, Miss Felicia Dujon. She is the spokesperson for education, and Mr. Ryan, sorry, Senator Ryan Walters. And we, as I said before, we'll be having a serious, robust conversation. Right? It's a pleasure being here, and I want to welcome all of the viewers. We will start with Miss Felicia Dujon. Lots to say about education, lots of challenges. Pleasure being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me again. So I want to wish our viewers a happy new year since I haven't been here since that time. But also I would like us to extend our condolences to the teacher that tragically lost her life this evening. And so we are seeing a myriad of tragedies for our country at the start of the year. And so we are hoping that her students, we extend our condolences to the family, students, and of course the school. But before we start, I think we've had a lot of conversation on education. There's been lots of conversation since last term. But I also would like to welcome our students, teachers, education facilitators, and staff to the Hillary term. It's a very exciting term. It's a challenging term at the same time. Exciting to the point that it's during the time you have knapsack. So students are getting prepared. I saw some of them are training for that. But also we have the 11 plus. So students are also preparing academically for that exam, which we'll have more conversation on because I did attend some of the town hall meetings on that matter. So we'll be addressing that very soon. But it was very interesting that I attended the town hall meeting at the Grantley Adams School on Saturday. And we have seen quite a number of information coming out to the public. And we are very pleased that the students have returned to school face to face. And I think that's very important because children and students tend to lose that transition when they're online. And we saw the kinds of difficulties our students endured while they were online. However, we still have some concerns as to the cost that we saw on the newspaper article where we saw it's over $500,000 that this matter has drawn to our attention. And so what we want to ask is as you see, we have a copy of their article here. And so one of the things that we want to ask the government, primarily the Ministry of Education, is who are the contractors for that project? I think it's very important. If we're spending that kind of money, we need to know what was being done and, of course, what happened, because it was an entire term. And to this point, we as the opposition still do not know what has happened with that matter. So I believe that it's very important that we have to have some kind of accounting for that matter. There's no coming to the public and telling us, well, you spent $500,000 to do that project, but at the same time, we do not know where the money went. And I think it's the onus is on the chairperson from the Grantley Adams, and of course, we want to know about what was the bidding process that was taking place during that time as well. All of that information, I think it's important. If we are talking about a government of transparency, I think it's very important that we have those kinds of discussions. We also wanted to hear a little bit from the teachers, of course, the principal, how they have been coping. I did indicate last term that I did visit the school, and I also visited the school after the claim that it has been repaired. So at this point, we are monitoring the situation. We are still hoping that we can have some kinds of information. I think transparency and accountability is very important. If we are going to spend that type of money, which is taxpayers' funding, I think it's important that we see that. But what was very interesting to me, comrades, is that I observed that the estimates for 2023-2024, there was funding allocation for maintenance of schools. And I think it's very important that we have those kinds of conversations, and we're seeing what the allocations were for each of those schools, including the Grantley Adams School. So all of these matters are very serious matters that I believe that we need to inform the public as to what is happening, where the funding is, because my emphasis, and I believe the opposition party has the responsibility, and our role is to ensure that the money is being well spent. We cannot have funding being spent. We have the estimates, money is being allocated in certain environments, money being allocated to certain units, but there's no tangible outcomes of those units. And these are some of the concerns that we have. We have very serious concerns because we're hearing thousands of dollars, millions of dollars are being spent, but we're not seeing the tangible outcomes of those. We're not seeing the deliverables. And I think it's very important that if we're doing project management, we believe the contractors owe us that kind of information to tell us exactly what has been transpiring. So I believe that the chief as well as the minister owes the public to tell us why that we've spent over $500,000 on the repairs of the school. Not that we're not saying it was necessary. It is necessary because we needed our students back at school, but at the same time, we need an account of the funding. We need to know exactly how the funding was spent. So welcome students again. As I said before, we welcome them and we're very happy that all our students have returned. And of course, it's a good thing. And also we noticed in the news that we have security guards posted at the school. And I know the Democratic Labour Party, as well as teachers and everyone, is relieved that students are now their security guard posted at all schools. I did make some rounds across the school, across the country, and I noticed that we have the security personnel are there. They're very professional. They're very alert. I asked many questions. So I'm very happy about that because it tells us particularly the environment that we're in right now. With the increase of violence and gun violence in public spaces, I think it's a very necessary intervention that is being done there. So I think there's a number of concerns that we have to discuss, and as we go a little bit further, we will see that. But I think that the Ministry of Education have highlighted so many challenges in the public, and I believe the opposition party has recognized that in some cases they're out of their reach. They're not living up to the kinds of claims that they said that they would. They were saying that they would have done a lot of repairs during the times of, and that is not being done. And as you can see, we're seeing the estimates are right here for the various schools. And I think this is Grantley Adams. And you can see the amount there, 24, 2025, and you can see the amount of money from taxpayers that is being spent over. And this is very important that we need to highlight because these are things that we need to see and recognize. And particularly for all schools, you're seeing that maintenance is one of the major factors that in what is being spent there. So I believe that these are some of the concerns that we have as to what it is. So as you can see, the feedback, you can see exactly how every school is allocated a particular amount of funding. And I think it's very important that we look at that because education gets one of the largest funding in the estimates as well. And so if you can actually look, you will see in terms of equipment and repairs and maintenance. So even maintenance, you've seen it's over $100,000, $180,000 is spent yearly. And so we need to ask the questions, where is that money going? And so these are the kinds of questions I think we need to ask.
And before you go on to that, we really appreciate the fact that you were screaming and championing the cause, the security guard cause, right? Before you go on. So we just want to thank you for that.
Yes, and as I said before, I think we're relieved that the ministry finally recognized the importance of having safety schools. Our children, the students deserve, and teachers as well, they deserve the safety at schools, as I said before, particularly at this juncture in time.
Coming towards the end of the school, you raised the issue of chemicals. And as a member of the Congress of Trade Union Staff Association of Various representing one of the secondary schools.
Yes.
And there is a problem with chemicals. It was raised that the Congress, government, members who sit on school boards, the discussion we had, there was a promise that they would get back to the staff with the issue. So I'm glad that you raised it. I know that a lot of some of the school heads are happy that it was raised because they believe that some attention would now be brought to bear on getting that matter started. So once again, thanks for being vigilant and for keeping the ministry on its toes.
Right, and that's the thing about the Democratic Labour Party. We're not just talkers, we're walkers as well. We don't just talk, we walk. We do what is required and necessary to get out of our office and ensure the safety of our people. And I think that's very important, the safety of our students in those units.
And we're runners as well, because you mentioned you're going to buy some running shoes this year. So we also run, not just me.
Yes, but it's important that we continue the advocacy that is needed because we are doing this on behalf of the people. We have to continue the legacy of having safe environments for children, which is what we've always done as the Democratic Labour Party. We've always ensured that free education is not only about having the good curriculum or methodologies, teaching methodologies, but also to ensure that our children are well fed. And this is another matter I think is of serious concern. Within the first week of school, I received some concerns from parents and teachers about the allocations of meals for students. And I believe what we're seeing under this administration is the deterioration of the meals, the preparation of the meals. And I believe that they said that we would have nutritious meals for students. And we do agree with that. We do agree that children need to eat healthy. And if we cannot do it in the school environment, we expect better things to happen. And this is one of the areas that I noticed that I think it's very important that we start discussing the issues of having a functional environment. And brings me to the question of the building for the feed schooling program. And okay, so we have that image now. And I think it's important that I think that is one of the school's meals. I can tell you it's a tangerine and something else. I do not know what it is. But I believe, yes, you have a fruit here, but we don't know. And this is not what the Democratic Labour Party envisioned. In 2025, this is not what we envisioned that we would have for school meals for our children. This is not what our children deserve. And I believe that it is very important that parents understand that we are doing our utmost best to ensure that we advocate on those matters. And yes, we may say that, we're providing those meals, but it's not a take what you get society. We have to treat our persons, our students, with utmost dignity. Utmost dignity. And it's not only that it's not to, the standards that it should be, but the times that it comes in. And one of the matters that I believe that is very important, and I am putting the Ministry of Education on alert, we are concerned about the timing and the lateness of meals to our students. We are very concerned about that because what we have recognized is that many students do not get breakfast from home. And this is the only meal that they have at school. And we can understand that parents are at the wit's end at this point. Why? Because we can look at the economy right now. We can look at the prices in supermarkets. And the least we can do is to assist parents. Parents are trying their best. And if we send them to school and we know they pay the money, whether it's $1, it's a big dollar for a lot of persons. And so it's very important that we treat them with dignity. And that's all we're asking for. We treat our people, our students, with some form of dignity. The legacy of the Democratic Labour Party has shown that we have continued to do that for our students, continue to do that for people. And we do not, what the Labour Party is, the Barbados Labour Party is really trying to erase or eradicate the history, the legacy of what we have done. And it wants me to ask the question, what has happened to that building, the school feeding program building that we should have had many years ago? The last Minister of Education informed us that she would have gotten the additional funding, I think it was about $3 million additional, to get that building functional. And to this day, we have had 2 ministers of education under the Barbados Labour Party, 2. And to this point, that building is still where it is right now. It's falling apart.
We're going to go on to the building, right? But I was trying my very best to try to identify the items that were actually on that train. I saw orange. I don't know what the other items. So I want to challenge the viewers, obviously,
it looks like a pita bread or something. But my concern is that we could do better. We can do better because if we look at the funding for the school feeding program, from the estimates, we'll see how much money is being spent there. And if Our good comrade will tell how much it's been allocated every year, yearly. So it tells us in terms of what is happening, and we need to get some account of that. We need to see what is happening in terms of, are they getting sufficient funding enough to supply the schools? Are they being underfunded? And these are the kinds of questions I believe that we need to ask. And if they are, perhaps the Prime Minister may cut down on her flying and ensure that the students receive the types of meals that they deserve, that they receive a warm meal, a hot meal, some eddos and fish and something, some rice and yam. We have to really treat our people with some kind of respect. And if we're talking about education, we're not only thinking about the intellect, we're thinking about the holistic person. We cannot have our children at school hungry and expect them to learn. This is what we're seeing. And if the children are coming home and saying, Mom, Dad, this is what we had today, how do you think the parent feels knowing that their child went to school and that's all they had for school meals? While those that are responsible to ensure that I'm sure they're not going to have that for lunch. That is not the meal they would have for lunch. And so it's very important that we look at in terms of those kinds of treatment and see how best that we can deal with those matters. One of the areas that I really wanted to look at as well is in terms of those various projects. And it seems to me that the persons within those various units, and I think we had a very good press statement on the education reform unit. Again, after being allocated $500,000 or more every year, and to be told now that they'll have to push back again. It has to be on hold. And it tells you again that, the kinds of communication, this is a government, and I believe this is a government. And as you can see, the newspaper article, I have to applaud them. They did a very good job, because while we're seeing colleges on hold, there we're seeing the Prime Minister having another party, enjoying herself, while the students in the back have no idea what is happening, have to suffer the kinds of meals that they have at school, unsure whether they'll have to do the 11 plus or not. You see, so this is very reflective. This is a very good image as to the realities that our society is dealing with. It's always a party and effect, while the serious matters are having to be dealt with. The Ministry of Education is really in a crisis at this point. It is in a state of disrepair, if I have to say so. There are so many challenges, and I know that many persons will say, well, we've always had those, but not to that extent. Not to that extent, where every other week something has happened. Now we're looking in terms of the whole entire, almost 3 years, we have been discussing education reform. But we at the opposition party, we knew this would not have occurred, because we know this government, when it comes to implementations of any project, it always has to be pulled back. The uncertainty for parents for 3 years. So one of the questions that we have and the challenges that we have is that we would like the Ministry of Education to give us an account of the funding that was spent in that unit. After 3 years of all those millions of dollars, for you to now tell us that you cannot, it has to be halted, and it perhaps at some point, we need to know what it's just a wastage of funding, a total lack of disrespect for taxpayers. This is money that parents are working hard, and you had all that funding only to tell us 3 years later that you do not know when we will have a very concrete roadmap to education reform. So these are very concerning matters, and I'm sorry that I took you to the death of the Ministry of Education. I believe it's very important that we have to call them on those matters, because they claimed that they were a government of transparency. We need the transparency now. We need to know what has been done with all those fundings. We need to know where the money that has been allocated, what has been done. We need an account of every cent that was spent over the last 3 years in that department.
Because based on the photo there, the Prime Minister actually looked well fed.
Yes, well, I wouldn't comment too much on that. What I can say is that they look very happy having all those feds while people are suffering, while the average Barbadian is suffering. And the assumption is that if I put many children's party, they maybe forget what they're going to eat at school, or perhaps they may not get in the kinds of intervention. So I think it's very important that we want to look at that as well. But if I may take you away from the food discussion, I want to also look at in terms of what we have been looking at in terms of the poor academic performances. And I think after almost 6 years under this government, we have seen that we have continued over the last 5 years poor academic performances in our schools from primary and CXC levels.
But before you go there was some issue where they couldn't get chairs.
Classes hadn't been lit.
I was hoping to avoid that, but I believe that, again, there, comrade, it has to do with project management. If you have people, they will understand what deliverables are. You'll understand what it's monitoring and evaluation. Because every project that the ministry engage in it, and I think perhaps that's what we need to recommend, that the persons within those units get, the University of the West Indies have a wonderful project management course that they can take for 3 months so that they understand what it is to have a project and ensure that project is executed successfully. And so this is what some of the problems are, because every project that this government has taken has not been successful. It has been a crisis. Every project you can possibly think about. And I think even in the ministry, the reason why it's very concerning for me is because it's in education. And our children, we have to remember they have a right to education. And because of the errors that is being done and the mismanagement and incompetency in the Ministry of Education, it's affecting our students when it comes academically.
Sister, I mean, we've all done exams. And when you are preparing for an exam, you reach a peak, you build up. And when you'll be nervous till you get in the room.
Yes.
And then you see the paper, you start moving. But then I have to wait 2 hours more.
Yes, I think it's an injustice. I would say it was, of course, it was a misstep, but at the same time, you would know if, so there, the reality is that you would know, you'd have to ensure that the room is safe and secure, first and foremost.
Did you check
Yes, the invigilators would have to go in and ensure that everything else is checked in. So, comrade, we're not surprised. We're dealing with the Ministry of Education. We know that these things will occur. We're even surprised when things actually happen the way that it do. And it's not the civil servants, really. It's the leadership, the poor leadership of this government. And the reality is that they do not feel accountable to the people of Barbados. So there's no one doing the checks and balances. Because if I call out the Minister of Education, well, she doesn't have to account to anyone. She doesn't have to account to the people of Barbados. She doesn't have to account to the parents or the teachers. So when there's no accountability, this is what you see in the public. It displays itself in the public. And I think these are some of the realities that we have. I went to the meeting on Saturday that dealt with the 11 plus, where the ministry came out to speak to the parents. And it was very alarming, the information that they shared in terms of what has been happening, where we're seeing where literacy and numeracy is decreasing. And we are not reaching our sustainable goals. It has been decreasing for Barbados for quite a number of years. Also for CXC as well, we're seeing that. And we're seeing that even if the ministry has implemented a literacy task force, we still haven't heard the evaluation and monitoring of it. A whole term has passed. What have we heard? Has it been successful? Is there anything else that we can do to it? And I think that level of miscommunication, there's not sufficient dissemination of information to the public so that people understand what is going on. We have a task force that we are paying for, the taxpayers are paying for, but we hardly hear anything about it. So one of the things that you see about the ministry, they would have all these great ideas, but the implementation, the practicality, the pragmatic parts of it, you don't hear anything. So 3 or 4 weeks later, it goes silent. And so people wonder what is going on. And this is the same thing that has happened with the 11 plus, the education reform. And then we have to hold people accountable. We have to hold people accountable so that people understand this is serious business. This is the education of our children. This is the education of our future. And we have to do what is in their best interest. And if persons are not doing or functioning the way that they should, then we need to do something about it. And we need to do it very urgently as well.
Has there been any new word back to the Barbados Community College becoming a university college?
Well, as I said before, we have to give them some credit. At least they tried with all these imaginations that they have. But the practicality is what is important because you're dealing with people's lives. We cannot be arbitrary when we're making such decisions. We cannot have somebody waking up tomorrow and say, let's do this. And by mid-afternoon, they change their mind. And they call a quick press conference. Well, we haven't seen a press conference for them in quite a while. So perhaps we'll see something coming up very soon from the Prime Minister. I mean, it's the new year. We haven't heard anything. All we've seen is pictures of parties of her attending those fetes and parties. And I think it's very important. So the school meals, the poor academic performances, I think it's very important. Our primary school teachers, they're doing the best. Right now, they're preparing our students for the 11 plus. And thank goodness for that, because every year we heard the 11 plus would be repelled. And now it still continues. And I think what it does to students, what it does to teachers as well and parents, because they're always in that state of uncertainty. We're dealing with a government that is uncertain about itself in any case. So we can almost imagine as to why these things are happening the way that it is. And so we want to do as much as we can for the people. We will continue to monitor those situations so that we can see. So there are quite a number of loans that we took under this government on behalf of the people of Barbados, and we believe that they need to give us some account of it. So the Inter-American Development Bank gave us a loan for Skills for the Future Loan 2, which is over $40,000 US. We need to know what has been done for that year. So there's quite a number of loans. As we know with this government, they take quite a number of loans and we have no idea. There's no transparency, no accountability, but we have to repay those loans. And we're not seeing any tangible outcomes of those loans that we have taken. So the frustration of parents and teachers is very important. We have to have that kind of communication. I believe we're still not investing in special needs children. I think that's very important. I was told at the meeting that parents have until the end of this month to apply for special services. So if the students are doing 11 plus, if they need additional time or board print or something like that, they have until. But my question is, how do a parent know that kind of question? We do not do enough screening of our students. So it's children may have different learning disabilities and a parent may not know. So the child may enter the classroom, may enter the examination room and may not know that they have certain disabilities. And I think even we just passed legislation on the Disability Act, and our children, we really need to do some more. And I think the Democratic Labour Party, we need to invest. We will invest more into our students as well, ensuring that our students are well screened in terms of that as well. So in a sense, I believe that Barbadians need to take some time and go through those estimates and see how much money is being spent. Because yes, they're telling us they're doing the work, but our money's been allocated, but no work is being done. And hopefully we can look at the Auditor General's report when it comes out and see what education, because we have quite a number of questions on those matters as well.
Yeah, but I was also thinking that we keep a lot of time focusing on the direct education, the math, the English, the 11 plus and so on. But I wonder if we don't need someone to spend some time on creative dancing,
Yes.
music,
Yes.
sports. And to do that, then we need to start to build up facilities that lend the environment comfort to do those things. For years, the only hall that you can have drama was coming there.
Yeah.
I think by now we should be having 4 or 5 facilities across the secondary schools to facilitate even ballroom dancing.
Yes.
You know, just call it something. So I think we need to see education broader than that, and that is why I worry when children have to go online, because school is not only about learning English and math, it's about learning how to socialize, how to live with people, how to engage your peers, how to learn respect, to speak to your teacher, how to address the janitor on the corridor, how to address the gentleman prepare the pitch, and so on. So I get worried when we chop and we change, and we seem not to be doing a holistic approach to child development. I don't know your view.
I agree with you. I agree with you, comrade. But what we're saying is that, as I said before, we've spent over $400,000 on a unit that's supposed to be working on those kinds of reforms. And if we've had that unit for nearly 3 years, it tells us how much money we've actually spent. Yeah. And nothing has come out of it. We haven't had any report. We haven't had we haven't had a report on it. I think it's by now they should have had a report to tell us what has been done in the last 3 years, what have they achieved? Have they had any kinds of areas that they need to focus
How much
on?
money has been spent?
Yes, not only that too, but in terms of, during the transition, while they were doing their research and public consultations, what has been the outcome of that? And I think it's very important that a report should be done to notify the public. Do not just come to the public and say, well, it wouldn't have worked out anyway. It's unacceptable at this point to tell the public after we spent all that money to tell us that there's nothing that, if people, you shouldn't be at work.
Take it or leave it.
You shouldn't be at work if you spend all that money in a unit. But it's important that we look at that. And I think we have to develop the human character. We have to develop not only the intellect, but also the other parts of the human person. And I think that's where all the other activities come from. But one of the things that we observed while the Education Commission at the opposition office is that we also have to recognize there's a decline in the population. So we're seeing less students going into those secondary schools. We see a number of secondary schools with a low enrollment.
Right.
But at the same time, what we're seeing is that in some schools, they have a higher enrollment, but there's also a high increase in high school dropouts. And that is very worrisome. We have 15%, and all that data can be found online, where you find that students are dropping off from school. And this
15%.
is, yes, and we need to look at those targets and see what we can be done on that as well, so that we can have more discussion on that.
Right, you do a lot of work with youth and so forth in terms of small business and employment. What is some of the challenges you see where the youth is concerned in terms of employment and setting up small business, etc.? What are some of the challenges you see?
All right, well, good evening to all the viewers in the Dlp Tv land. This is my first visit to the show. So thanks for the invitation to the organizers. I know you're a senior now on the show. But Felicia, you're actually flagged here by 3 St. Michael Northwest gentlemen.
Well, very nice, very nice.
Just so you know. But it's an interesting conversation that we've been having. It's really a good conversation to reflect on in terms of what the government has done over the past 3 years in the Ministry of Education in this instance. In St. Michael Northwest, we have 3 primary schools. We have 1 nursery school, 1 secondary school, and we are bordered by 1 or 2 secondary schools, St. Leonard's boys. So, school education is not distant to us. We understand the intricacies and the importance of having good social structures in the school. In terms of having a good plant, we know that one of those plants has been deteriorated very badly, and that is Dickens Primary School.
Yes.
It has been neglected. I know you raised some points with me offline a couple of months ago on some of the work that is needed at that school, and it's actually very sad.
Even you think the project next door that had been abandoned, and
School
we used to
essential.
use that, used to benefit from that.
Yeah. Actually, and right now, in the back of the school, there's the gully. I mean, the amount of bush, mosquitoes, and all this in the back of the school.
That used to be well kept. Yeah, used to be well kept.
So is a very broad challenge and problem that the government is not addressing, right? And I know people like to think that some of these conversations are so highfalutin, and we're talking about 11 plus and all that, but I mean, when you get into the nitty-gritty of what's happening on the ground, it is very disturbing. It's very unsettling. And the picture of the food said it all, the lunch said it all this morning, right? And if children have to take that for lunch and have to go and practice and do, they do the track and field tryouts and all that in the sun and so forth. I gotta come back and eat that late. It is not going to be good, But one of the big things as we reflect is that what has to me came out of the conversation you were having is priorities of the government and the mismanagement of the government finances. And when they talk about priorities, we talk about the importance of school. You may say that school has one of the biggest education, has one of the largest budgets, but is it sufficient to deal with what you are supposed to deal with? Is the money being spent in the correct ways? And people always say, where are we going to get the money from? Where are you going to get the money from to fix these issues? But we don't have to look further but to the spending of this government. $50 million at Kensington Oval.
For what?
At Kensington Oval will not earn an additional dollar than it earned last year. $5 million of supposed Oystons. Masters Road, we don't know how much yet. The renovations done at Pelican Village. All of these things to facilitate a World Cup that was not as successful as it was supposed to be. But we are talking close to $100 million spent through the renovations, through the marketing of the tournament, through BTMI, etc. But this is money that could have been spent in other areas in our society. Now we're saying that we don't renovate or we don't keep our things in good state, but the amount of money and the speed in which this money is spent to renovate and the amounts are very questionable. You got the housing fiasco, where you got overruns of $20-something million. This is where the money is going. So if people ask, where do we get the money? The money is being mismanaged and misspent, misallocated. Oh, $60 million. I could go on and on. And everything is millions of dollars. Right? We hear about the mill and pave. We don't know how it's really being administered. We hear that the small vendors are not getting the work. But it's $60 million, I think it was initially. And it's continuing now, but there are no details on how it's being spent. I could tell you that in St. Michael Northwest, I have not seen one road that has undergone the mill and pave.
Wow. So we pick and choose.
So obviously they're picking and choosing, and they've chosen not to come into certain communities as well. So it's not that they only neglect the schools in some communities. There's a big neglect of a lot of community work and some of the things that taxpayers in those communities are paying. And we're talking about densely populated areas. And when you consider densely populated area, you're thinking about a number of persons. A lot of persons are paying taxes in a small area. Right? It's not a residential area where you have persons living on 7,000 square feet of land with 2 people in a house. You're talking about developments, 20 blocks, 25 blocks or so in Ferdyhurst. How much in the farm?
About
80 in the farm. Talking about Rosemont, Golden Acre. We're talking about a lot of people and a lot of families, right? So the contribution to the economy is significant, and people like to downplay these things. And not only in St. Michael Northwest, there are other areas, God Hill, Silver Hill, Pine, and so forth. But the priorities of the government is another thing, along with the wastage. The priorities of the government. What have they prioritized for us? They're prioritized paying friends and family. That is what you have said in different words, right? Because who has benefited from all of this consulting work? Persons that were on retirement, not supported by this Labour Party. Have come back out of retirement to get the work, but do not have the results to show for it.
Right, where you know who is responsible for this fencing thing, this mad fencing thing that going everywhere. Look, all fence. I mean, he don't make better get all fence up.
And not only that, they spend copious amount on red paint.
But
Get
fencing,
everything right.
fencing is, and in these times we have to be very careful because we think we might be securing an area, but we might be really harming the persons that have to patronize those areas. Because if you have security breaches in terms of shootings and all things that go on, you can't get out. Not that we want these things to happen, but we have to be open-minded. Right? And if you use Pelican as an example, you cannot get into Pelican that easy. That means you cannot get out. Right? And I understand you don't want variants and different elements in the place, but you still have to manage these things very carefully. But again, I think the priorities we see that if we stick to education, we see that more spending, obviously, but more careful management to go to the school meal service.
Yes, definitely.
Timely meals, more nutritious meals. They have spent a lot of time kind of picking on the entrepreneurs and small vendors to tell them, don't sell this, don't sell that. But what do they send for the children to have lunch?
Flour.
Right? So the priorities are off. And if the priorities are off, then the spending will be off.
Correct.
Right? So you're not going to match. You're matching the priorities of spending, and their priority now is borrowing.
Yes.
Right? Borrowing, popping up reserves, and you're not going to get a lot of priorities in the social elements of the society that we expect at school and education, healthcare, or one of the two main areas where we expect a lot of social support.
You see, when you want to borrow and you call some areas, you're more likely to get a loan or a grant. So this government has this to do with climate change now, resilience.
The Bridgetown Initiative.
Yeah, well, the Bridgetown Initiative, are you still looking for it?
Yeah. So but before I come to you, Ramon, just about to shape it up some of
That's
what.
cool.
Yeah.
Um, I think that your reference, Felicia, back to what has been budgeted and what has been borrowed in terms of the ministry is very important. Because remember, we're looking the country right now, we're looking down a barrel of $1 billion debt for this financial year, where the government has to borrow money to pay its bills. That's the reality, and that's simple form. They cannot pay their bills unless they borrow $1 billion. In a few months, they will come back to the people of Barbados to borrow another $1 million to pay their bills again. And it will continue and continue and continue because priorities are wrong. They're not spending the money appropriately. And they just feel that they can borrow money, hope the economy grows to say that that is sustainable. But we are in a crisis, a financial crisis, when you have to borrow $1 billion amidst all the wastage to pay your way. So
Yeah, well, you mentioned small business. In this climate now, how difficult is it to set up a business in Barbados?
setting up a business is the easiest thing anybody can do in any climate. You get a business name and you pay $104 at corporate affairs. But that's not the business. That is registering the business. I was on the road yesterday during the canvas, and I came up to the family, and the young lady that was at home, she pointed to her vehicle. She wanted to do a business that required her vehicle and stuff like that. And there's no support for her other than a loan of like a trust loan or something like that, right? Everybody does not want to borrow money to be in debt because they are already living in debt. They already got your bills to pay. You already got furniture loan. You already have your debt. You already have a family to feed, etc. But you don't have that kind of concessionary thinking at the small level. But we go to Parliament very often, and I have had to do it in the past, and approve concessions for large businesses, right? And you see, the difference is that one, you're allowing a company not to pay something, so they're saving money. On the other hand, you're withholding something from somebody not to do something. So the government is saving money, but the small man is at a disadvantage. And I'm not saying that obviously you arbitrarily just give away money, but I'm saying that we don't have the facilities really to support small business. We really do not. We have facilities to give us our small loans. And you're talking a small business loan, and I can guarantee you that those loans, the interest that you're asked to pay, is more than the interest that the government is paying, to repay their loans. Yeah. You're talking about a small man, right? And those loans don't get written off. They get reclassified and all that. So you always have that loan. They're not written off. But what does the government do? They write off the debt that they owe you. They write off the NIS, and we have to work longer. Right? But I think it is a very sensitive situation because we have to balance as a society who we support and how we support. Right? Everyone wants businesses to do good. This is how the country is able to survive. But my position, I manage business. Business has to be sustainable for us to employ persons and for us to contribute to tax revenue and VAT and all that. So no one's against that, but there must be equal opportunity across the board. A small business right now, in 2022, after the government won the election, and they announced the ministries. There was no ministry of small business. That tells you about the priorities of the government. No ministry of small business. You have a minister of business and energy. And even in Small Business Week, in her address in Small Business Week, she spoke about energy to large businesses, not about small business and their challenges and how they're going to fix them. So the focus, the priorities are misaligned. They're not with the average person. They're not with the small man. And that is clear. And another great example, because I think what we need to do as a party is to give examples of the behavior of the government. And during COVID, the BEST program offered $300 million to tourism, large businesses primarily. $300 million. And if you're familiar with how the system works, when you say the system, the Rastafari say the system, the banking system works. If you are in a very comfortable place, if you have an asset, and most hoteliers have an asset called a hotel. They have property that they can leverage. A small business doesn't have anything they can leverage but themselves, right? What they give it are the skills and talents and everything. But no, small businesses got around $20 million to support. There are 93% of our businesses in Barbados are small business, small and medium-sized businesses. 93%. They employ about 45% of the workforce. There's no reason why any government should neglect it. No reason why any government should not have a ministry of small business and entrepreneurship. Not in a small island development state like Barbados.
I mean, we've spoken a lot about mass English in terms of education. How about a lot of financial literacy courses, etc.? What do you think?
I can go back to something Derek said. I think it's sum it up. Discipline is what we need to teach at school, first and foremost. Because discipline will create a mindset of not only being courteous, not only being polite to your seniors, your elders, and so forth, but to how you treat the things like financial literacy, affairs, and manage money and that sort of discipline. And if we have discipline, what do we have? A disciplined society. What do we have now in the schools, Felicia? I saw a young boy at a bus stop. And my daughter is 10 years old. Said, Daddy, he go to school like that? You should see the man. You should see, I got called him man. You should see that young boy. Let me tell you, there is something wrong when we go to any labs. That's how we see it. To make people believe that they should vote for us. That is the Barbados Party.
Yeah.
That is cool. They want to be cool. But they have kind of chipped away at the discipline in the schools. By deportment is a big discipline. Of course. One of the things that when first thing you have to do to get a job is to get an interview. And the first impressions count. The first thing a person lets you when you walk in is your deportment. So if you tell a young guy or a young lady, you could come in this institution as a youngster, anyhow, anywhere, it don't matter. What you expect at 17 or 18, what they can do when they come in the workplace?
Do you think that we need more mentoring of our young person? I think they should have programs where, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's in the conversation we have. That's fine.
But it is that we need to bring back discipline too.
Yes, of course.
And order,
Of course.
right? And
of course,
order,
I
because
agree.
if a person feels that they can dress anyhow, they probably feel they can conduct themselves anyhow. You know, we know that there's situations where parents sometimes are not the best examples in terms of how they come to the school and communicate with staff with issues and stuff like that. But those things were forever part of our society. What we had though was discipline. There was a lady that lived opposite me growing up, Cicely. She's passed now. And I remember as a boy, because I moved into Freddie when I was 10 years old there. And she came, the time I passed, and she came and she called me, Ryan, come here. She said, let me tell you something. every time you get to the house and go, so, and you speak to me, you don't have to come back and speak to me again. it was
so
discipline.
ingrained.
It was ingrained that every time you see if 4 people in the gallery opposite me, hi, good morning, come back down, good morning. That was part of us.
For me, I call everybody auntie.
Yeah, auntie. You know, you grew up when you see somebody in the street, you speak to them, respect them. You know, you wait in line in the supermarket, you give up your line to an older person. These are just normal things that.
I give you a story to support that. I used to go on Deacons to play volleyball on the evenings. I would come home, snatch up my gear, and take off because they want to get on the court. Get on the court. And I had an old lady looking through the window. I said, "Good evening." We go on. Every evening, say good evening. She doesn't good evening. One evening, I got on the court and I can't find my guards. So I can't be doing one. I left one with them. Me hope the next evening coming down. I said, "Can you see some spoil on? You dropped something yesterday."
Right.
I had passed before speaking. She was let's ignore that. But just by being told by your parents that you have to have manners, and that manners make a man, and that a part of manners is to address your elderly people before they address you. So you are not the way for elderly person to say good morning. It's your responsibility as a young person to say good morning, and please, and thank you. Those things mean a lot, but they disappear.
And I think we need to bring back, in terms of bringing back as a party discipline into the schools. Remember, you have how many teachers with the teachers start? Like you have teachers that have to deal with these situations.
Yes.
They have to manage these situations, so they now have to deal with transitions as well, right? So I haven't heard a big outcry, but I know that there's a silent on the belly.
Yes.
You know, with this whole thing about indiscipline in schools in terms of how children are allowed to come to school, how children are allowed to behave, etc. Right? So I think one of the keys, Ramon, is not only about the financial literacy, it's not only about maths and English, as you said, it's also including sports and other cultural activities and stuff. But I believe the foundation is discipline.
Yes.
Right? Discipline.
I just want to add on that. I remember just seeing on social media very recently in terms of the music on the transportation, the public transportation, which is very concerning as well, because many a times when we do understand that young persons, yes, of course, we understand discipline, but I think they need guidance. The majority of them need to be guided. Remember, they haven't been here before. So they're now navigating this space, they're now navigating this journey. And I think we as older members, the elders in the society have to give them guidance. And in the same token, if we don't have those mentors and we don't have those persons to give them guidance, we've seen what is happening. They will adapt those kind of behaviors, those antisocial behaviors. It didn't just emerge, it came from somewhere. So right now what we're seeing, even in certain countries, they're looking to ban TikTok. I think even in the US, because of the kinds of influence that it has on children. So we have to look at what are the influences of our young persons, what influences their minds, because it's really something about the intellect. There's something that they're gravitating to that makes them feel more appealing to the society, that allows them to adapt to the environments that they are. And there's a number of research on that in terms of, and particularly during COVID. Remember, during COVID, the majority of our students were at home. Many of them were not supervised, they were unsupervised. They had to be online. And of course, we've had all the experiences of that, what it looked like, because parents at work, children at home. Some of them are on Google Classroom, some of them on TikTok, whatever that it is. So they're learning various types of behaviors that may be harmful to them. And I think we have, as a society, it is our responsibility to provide the kind of guidance. Now, what is very important is that we need to speak about transportation of our students. Transportation, there is allocation in the budget for transportation of our students where they give subsidies for the transportations for students. I'm very concerned with the rural areas. I've seen students, I took some time to drive around and I saw students in the rural area trying to get bus all after 6 o'clock. And we can't have that. And this is something that we need to look at in terms of the deficiencies in transportation for our young persons. But at the same time, we have to look at the type of behaviors that is exhibited at the bus stops, the van stands, and on the bus. what kinds of music those operators, and I do understand they have their openness to play whatever, but you could understand a 5-year-old listening to bashment music. We don't mind the bashment for adults, but if you have primary school children and you're hearing that kind of music, it is very concerning, because even you as an adult sitting and listen to that music and your child is there, you wonder, okay, I haven't exposed the child. And people may say, well, children are exposed to it on internet and whatever. But at the same time, if you're an adult and you're hearing other adults having that kind of conversation on a van, listening to, and I think the minister that is responsible for transportation, who was also a minister of education, should also look into that. During the time where students are on those vans, we need to be more responsible as adults as well when it comes to students and children. Not when we see the type of behaviors that we're seeing now, we have to also reflect that it really takes a village to raise a child. But if the village is indisciplined, then chances are this is the type of, it's, what we tend to say is that the chicken is coming home to roost. It's as basic as that. And this is what we're seeing, that our young persons are not getting the kinds of intervention. They're not getting the types of leadership that is required of them. And in some cases, they're looking at the leaders, the current leaders, and the kind of behaviors they have. Are they a good representation of what a leader should be in a society? And we have to act, and we have to be honest about those questions. And when you see your leaders doing certain types of behaviors, when we're seeing that money being allocated and it disappears, don't you think the young persons are looking at that as well and noticing that, money just disappearing and nobody's being held accountable? We expect young persons to be accountable, but we're not holding ourselves accountable.
People,
and this is what is happening now. This is why we're seeing the types of behaviors that we're seeing, because the young persons believe that they now have to create their own generation. We may not necessarily like it, but it's a generation that they're formulating. And in the end, it's we that are going to be harmed with it, because I believe the majority of us may not want to go to a gas station right now. That's the reality.
I wanted to make this point.
For both reasons, for two reasons.
I want to make this point. People in Barbados are becoming very hypocritical, and they want to point fingers at some people and ignore others. And our leaders have a responsibility and a duty. So when they are interacting with us, to carry a position and a posture that is reflective of the post you hold. I saw our Prime Minister up on Botanical Gardens. I don't care what, and children saying what they should be saying. I don't care one, and the children with the bad words. The Prime Minister, that's the norm. That's the standard, and people feel she cool.
That's it.
You are Prime Minister. We expect some standards from you wherever you are. Wherever you are our Prime Minister, and you set examples for us to follow. But when you reduce your behavior to come down to the level of other people, then you make that the normal behavior. And people don't want to discuss it. People want to shy away from it and go, she's regular. No, that is indiscipline. But no, but that's indiscipline. There's behavior for certain places and for certain people. If the Governor General did that, everybody would cuss her. The President, everybody would not expect that from the President, but they seem to expect it from the Prime Minister, which I can't internalize that. I cannot internalize that. If somebody saw my mother behaving like that, I would be shocked. If I saw my aunt behave like that, I would be shocked. But the Prime Minister can do it. And everybody skin them out and laugh. And then we want to tell the children, don't curse, don't speak that way. You got to behave this way. When the Prime Minister behaves and does as she likes, indiscipline. That's where the discipline starts from. But people don't want to address it, call it the fighting to say it. But I can say, indisciplined leadership leads to indisciplined followers. And that's what Barbados is.
But the government is one big party.
Yes.
The first thing they do is
Batchment.
It's strap party.
And you have a leader of it trying to bring standards, trying to bring a level of leadership that reflects the kind of society that you would want. And people say, he ain't forceful enough. He said, come and behave bad. Come and, this place got everything upside down.
Yeah, and it brings back again, Derek, and thank you for sharing that, because it really talks, when we talk about, and I'm just going to bring the little academic side, that we have a philosopher, John Dewey, who speaks that education, we have that saying that education is for life, but education is life itself. So we don't only teach the intellect in a school setting, in a unit, in a plant, but more in terms of what students, what they see when they're outside of the school setting, when they get into the community, what are they exposed to? So right now, we want to disassociate the crime and the violence, but we can understand, children understand what is happening within the societies. They understand that this is what adults are doing. If you turn onto social media, you see the number of adults that are participating in violent behavior. But we're not speaking about that because it's not appealing enough, because we do not want to take the accountability for it. And so it's very important that we have to have those conversations in schools, how to have in terms of behavioral management, how to have more emotional intelligence, all of those kinds of skills are needed. It's actually a skill to teach persons how to behave and conduct themselves, which is outside of all the violence, because the Attorney General still hasn't told us what the violence is about as yet. So we're hoping at some point he will come on and tell us exactly why we're seeing the kind of violence. But we can understand some of the violence that we're seeing is really about how persons deal with conflict. So conflict resolution is very important. But what I wanted to add is that I've seen that even in the estimates, we're seeing that there's not much funding for those students at risk. It almost seems that they're not providing enough funding in terms of that. So at-risk students, you'll see like they only get like $1 million. We spend more than that in Christchurch, and the Peace Program. The Alma Parish School, I'm not seeing any details for 2004, 2005. So that we have a question for that. What is happening with the Alma Parish School? Because this is a school where the children got the intervention that was required. And so I think there's a lot of questions that we need to ask in terms of that. And the education is really the foundation of everything that we have been speaking of. If we're trying to rehabilitate persons, we're trying to get persons, our young persons, where they need to be. We're not only talking about the intellect, but we have to look at how they make moral decisions. If you're telling me that a prime minister could go on a stage and use explicit language in front of minors, then it tells me in terms of how do you make moral judgment in public spaces? How do our young persons make decisions between right and wrong? So there's always that gray area for them. And I think that's the kinds of questions that we have. We have to teach those skills.
But let me just ask a few things here. We have, when we were building up Barbados in the 60s and 70s, there were connections between community development, education, sports, culture. There were always in connections between them. That there was a holistic approach and with a particular objective to build into individuals' responsibility, a sense of family, a sense of community. And we seem now to individualizing everything, breaking all of those pieces into separate units, as though they are not connected. The Democratic Labour Party has to make that connection. It has to bring the nexus between those pieces and run a theme through all of them that connects all.
But where's the school? In the community?
Exactly. Church
in the community. Yeah. Right. So we got safeguard and take care of community because it's one. It's one. They're not individual parts, right? They're one. There's a whole. They all make up the communities that we live in.
It's a thing that I think we need to try to ignore that. Listening to the policy teams, that they're understanding that connection. But we gotta start writing about it and getting the discussions to move away from the top and come to the bottom, because that is where we have to get our country reinforced with the values, the standards, and the norms, and that are important, not the dollars and cents. Those are to buy things. But why we buy them, who we buy them from, and what we buy, and when we buy, all of those things are what the community will ingrain in you. You didn't just get one morning, they say you was a good morning and good afternoon. You didn't wake up one morning. That was your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, all on the same page. And your neighbor expecting you to say good morning. And if you don't say good morning, she's going to complain for you. So the community has some say the values, the expectations, its behaviors. We have to get back there. We can't go back to everything, but there are some key things that once you stress them, you will get it.
My thing is that we have a situation where you either spend most of the money up front, right? You talk about at-risk, right? Most of the money up front, instead of promising 7.5 million at the end, So we really gotta look at, especially at-risk youth, and really put a lot of resources towards that.
We should, and as I said before, when I was looking at the data from the common entrance 11 plus examination, and you've seen students underperforming, you've seen students with grades of lower than 5%. It's alarming. And what happens is that those students may enter the secondary school unit and not get the kind of intervention that is required. And if those kinds of agencies are underfunded, our students are the ones suffering from it. And so it's very important that the Ministry of Education, particularly when it comes to policy development, to ensure that those various agencies, those various units are actually doing what they're claiming to be done. We need to see the tangible outcomes of what we call the deliverables. And as I said before, I think it's important that all those units have a project manager or project officer that oversees in terms of the implementation stage, in terms of the finances, and of course, what are the deliverables, so that we can have things on time, so that all these works can be done on time, that we do not have all the extreme delays that we have or recurring delays that we have in the Ministry of Education, unlike every other ministry. So it's not just the Ministry of Education. I think every ministry in this government, in this society, has been feeling. It's in a state of crisis, in a state of disrepair. I cannot even speak about whether it's agriculture, whether it's healthcare, whether it's transport board, whether it's education. Every ministry is facing a crisis. And I think it is, again, because of the poor leadership, the incompetent leadership, in some cases, the vindictive government that we're dealing with. Why I say vindictive? Because we left this government with facilities, with policies, and they are refusing to implement it because they believe that it is part of it came from us, so they're not doing it. But the people are the ones that are suffering and are being affected by it. And I think being a vindictive government, I think there's so much to be said about that. You need to work on behalf of the people. We cannot think about whether you're a B or D. You have to work on behalf of the people. Our children are suffering and not getting the meals that they deserve because you have a building in St. Philip. And I believe that constituency is the same constituency that is from the Minister of Education. We need to find out what is with that building so that our children can get the meals that they deserve. They can get the transportation on time, a timely transportation as well. They can get the curriculum. They can get the kind of educational intervention. And most importantly, our teachers need the support. I think it's about time we raise their salaries as well. I'll just throw that in because they deserve it. They deserve it. I see teachers going in their pockets and getting facilities for the classrooms and getting all various types of items for the classrooms that the ministry is supposed to be at least assisting. And we need to at least, because we heard that there was a teaching commission, we need to know what it is. I know the teaching commission was established. The Prime Minister did speak about it. But what is the outcome of that? How has it been functioning?
How many commissions were established since 2000?
I made a comment that this is a government committees and commissions. and I'm free from, yes, Prime Minister. You should see it. If you want to kill a policy, send it to a commission or a committee.
Yeah,
and Prime Minister seems I will learn that too
many. But we want to ensure that the teachers' rights are respected, and we want the teachers to know that the Democratic Labour Party has always supported them. We are there to support them and to ensure that they kind of get the empowerment that they need. And of course, we should give them a raise They have been through stressful periods over the last 5 years under this government and still been able to function and do what is required. So I think there's quite a number of things that that we will be there to support them as a government.
And it brings to mind, I think I read a editorial from Barbados today where it spoke about productivity. But what jumped out at me was the reference to levels of staff, both private and public sector, but it highlighted that the government should make sure they have adequate levels of staff across the service.
Yes.
So they have to ask the question, do we have staff shortages
Yes.
at the
Yes.
school
Yes.
youth service?
Yes.
How many vehicles do we have? How many are operational?
The
I mean,
answer is
what is stopping us from hiring adequate staff to feed our children? And they see the difference between governance then and campaigning. Governance, in my opinion, is making sure that the civil service is staffed appropriately
adequately.
and adequately. Politics could be selected 100 people that I've seen in the paper, giving them $5 million because next year could be election. There's a difference. I'm not saying that they will not do work to clean up, but those are the sort of things where you neglect the structures, the civil structures we have, the organization called civil service. You neglect that to go outside to do the politics and the crime, the same thing, the crime commission that we spoke about earlier, that Alleyne is in charge of.
Peace
The
initiative.
peace program is one of those things as well.
Yeah.
Right? There are institutions within the Ministry of Youth Affairs that does everything that Alleyne has gone on TV and said that his ministry or sub-ministry is doing.
It's and I get where I agree.
Including the swimming program.
Yeah. Youth services do that. But youth services do when if you go into the youth service, you got to do swimming, you got to do water safety. So I mean, I get so emotional about this lack of initiative and cohesiveness, and everything is a public relations thing. And then this thing about the canals, this gullies thing, though. I said myself, the gully behind us in Dickens, that was maintained, and this government came in, dig up all the banana trees, bulldoze all. We had 100 and somebody banana fig trees planting on canal with all kinds of trees, and they're bulldozing because they heard a man was planting marijuana. Bulldoze the entire thing.
Over a bush,
There's no bush.
Mosquitoes.
And then I'm talking about gullies program. We took that gully and beautified it.
Along with the community center.
Yes, I mean, that's
One of the basic skills where education is concerned is reading. You've seen a decline in the standard of reading to schools, and so what do you think the solutions are?
No, I did speak on that I believe that there is a policy, a national reading policy. I think that is important. We should have that implemented within, not implemented only, but I'll go to the communities and speak on it. Not only because when we speak about policy, we look in terms of, just more theory and not practical element. I think the library service is doing a wonderful job at that. They're going through all the communities in all parishes where they have reading classes for young persons on Saturday afternoons. And I think that's very important, but also we need to have specialized reading teachers in schools. We have teachers that are specialized in areas, are capable, but I think you need to have specialized teachers in reading to help that. So literacy, numeracy is very important because you need to read to do math. And so that's very important. But I think the community has been doing quite a number of areas. I've seen retired person taken on board in their own communities to help with reading programs within schools. I think there's a lot of work to be done, quite another work, but I think we have to invest in those areas. So if we have the literacy task force, I would assume that reading is part of the component of that. And I think it's very important, which is one of the reasons why I said that I think there is a decline in our education, because we can see for the Sustainable Development Goals by UNICEF, it tells us that Barbados is ranked 82 over 167 countries. Why? Because in respect of education, we're seeing a decline in how students perform. One of the reasons why we see that as well is because we're seeing that there's a decline in their prerequisites for higher education. So when they apply for the Barbados Community College or the university, not only University of West Indies, but any university, and if they don't have the prerequisites, they have to do all those remedial classes, which is very important why we have to do the funding for those at-risk students that may have not performed well. And I just want to share an experience with you. What I observed on Saturday at that meeting. Parents came in, and these are 11 plus students, and the presenter was telling the teacher, the parents about how the students are performing in 2003, 2004. And I want us to keep in mind that also these are students that went through 2 years of online learning, and we have not taken that into consideration. So for a long period of time, we will see the effects of COVID and online learning on those students, because some of those students went from reception to class 1. So you'll see class 1, class 2. So we have to do, I think the ministry has to do some research on that. I think UNICEF and other regional and international organizations have done research, but we have to monitor those situations, monitor those students that went through online learning. Because they learned differently from their peers. They were not in class, so some of them may have accumulated the knowledge and the curriculum, but some of them may not. And I saw and I observed that when you saw, because you see you have the different zones, you have 3 main zones, zone 1, zone 2, and 3, and the secondary schools are placed in there. And when you see a student having a grade like 0 or 5 or 2 being placed in certain secondary schools, and that child will be placed among other schools, you can also imagine how the parent feels that my child can't read, my child can't write. The parent also feels that they have failed the student. I have failed my child because I myself can't read. I'm probably illiterate myself. And so these are the kinds of concerns I think the ministry has to step up its game to ensure that that kind of intervention is there. That students, it's very easy to identify them. There's a computerized world that we have in. So you know who the students are that are failing. So what are you doing for those students? Are we going to allow them to go all the way through high school, and then when CXC level comes, we see the same students are failing throughout their lives? Yep. And so it's very important that we look into those matters, and I think the ministry has some work to do in terms of that we need to have data analysis of what is happening to our students that are underperforming in those areas. And it's not just the maths and English alone. It's the sciences. We saw a decline in chemistry as well. And what does that say for us? Because if we don't have students in the sciences, which that means that we'll have very limited persons within the scientific fields. And if we're spending money on STEM, it also an innovation. So it's a ripple effect. If we don't deal with those matters, we can see in the next few years, those students will be affected. Our society will be affected. Why? Because when they enter the job market, they may not have the kind of prerequisite. They may not have the skill sets. They may not be able to adapt to the environment, and we have to prepare them for those environments.
I think the critical point you made that really stands out. Those kids who are now going to be doing the 11 plus.
Correct.
I don't know what people's experiences were, but my relationship with my teachers at 7 and 8 were more critical than anything else to me. My mother couldn't get me to do anything that I didn't ask my teacher about. Because any teacher tell you, hey, nobody can't change that mind. The teacher say it. My teacher say it.
My teacher do this.
My teacher. And therefore, if I'm away from my teacher for almost 2 years, at 7, the impact to me is significant. I don't know what we have done to help students between those periods. I think secondary children are more likely to make that adjustment. But I think in the infants and primary, those 2 years, we should have been doing something, special things, trying ways to be creative. Because 2 years away from my teacher would have killed me. Because my whole life was centered around my teacher. I only had a male teacher when I got school at foundation. All of my teachers were female. And therefore, to me, the impact on losing Miss Crenshaw or Miss Haynes would have killed me.
Yeah, and
That might internalize that environment.
I think even UNICEF wrote on that as well, the impact that COVID had on those students. But as I said before, in the last few years, and we have at least 2 or 3 more years of the students that are coming from COVID, we have to look at that and see, because they can't do the same kind of examination as the predecessors. These are different students. The workload was, pretty much, and we have to take in consideration the inequalities within society. Some students did not have tablets. They did not have the devices. They did not have internet. They did not have electricity. And at the same time, we have to understand that all of those impacts, you miss one class in learning your vowels. Can you imagine that? And then you need your vowels for the rest of your life.
Yes.
If you don't know that, then what does that say? So you can imagine those students, because remember, some students who just in reception, and then some went to class 1. So what I'm hoping that the ministry would have done is to take a look and investigate what is happening with those students in those classes, those specific classes, and do the kind of intervention that is required, as opposed to spending $100,000 or $100 or $1 million or more on all these units that has not provided us any deliverables. Yes, the change management, $1 million, $1 million and more.
Change money for one.
And this year they're supposed to get $5 million to do what? To tell us that they can't do anything about it this time. And I think these are the core matters. And I remember reading an article from our late Prime Minister David Thompson, what he spoke about, that if we can't get it right through education of our children, and Errol Barrow, our founder, this is our legacy, that we, the Democratic Labour Party, has always empowered our people. We're not handout. We don't give handouts. We empower people. And this is what we need to do, continue to empower them by ensuring that all the taxpayers' funding that they have, that it is properly managed. And I think that is the most critical part, that they seem to overtax taxpayers, put the burden of all the taxpayers, but we're not getting anything from it.
We best passed over transportation. I believe we have to get the organizers to do a session on transport.
Yes.
Nothing else but transport. But on the matter of school transport,
yes,
it is, to me, a very critical area. And I have some views about the transport. I go to the hall often, and I watch the police have to go and make sure you're trying to get on the bus. Because they're waiting for a particular bus where they can go, you get in them. Yeah.
So I was one of those at some point. I was one of them. Me and Ramon did.
Yeah.
She catch the bus too.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't see bus and just go by the bus every day. But the thing is, though, it's a different time.
Yeah.
It's a different time, and it's dangerous time too. We've been school, man, we put the rock at you, right?
I agree.
So I think we need to spend the time looking at transportation on the shore, and to really appreciate that we have less passenger space now than in 2018. All the electric buses that we have to bring in, and giving the program to pick up elderly and school children, or capacity to move people has been reduced. Even if we take a little example, the buses that we bring in now, these electric buses, can't carry any more than 40. And the other buses used to carry 65 and 67. That's just one area to point to that. These minibuses go off at 6:30 and come on at 6:30. So if you after 6:30 and you go to play football at school, you got to wait for that bus that come every hour. So you get home after 9.
And I know you want a whole program, but I think we could start some discussion on that now, right? Because for me, transportation is one of those things that fuel the economy. If people cannot move around and in a timely manner, we have problems. So we to look at the transportation for schools as a separate issue. Transportation for everybody else, workers,
Elderly.
elderly, you elderly.
I got
People that have to get to work. I saw, and this way I said there are significant signs to show that nothing has been done over the last 6 years to develop our country and take us forward. Nothing has been done in transportation.
There's electric buses.
We have identified that. We have identified that. Let's use hotel workers. We've identified that hotel workers have been asked to get to work early and to leave late by the shift. But you have to be at work early to get breakfast ready for the guests and so forth. And a lot of the businesses, people looking to open at 6:37 when persons hit the road because they're serving people. As you said, this is 2024 now. People taking meals on the road and so forth. But as relates to hotel, what the Barbados Workers Union fought for is therefore to make the employers incur expenses to transport staff before and after certain hours, which is fine in extreme circumstances.
Yeah.
But if you look at the broader picture, instead of trying to improve the transportation system and trying to be able to offer different services that could accommodate the wider society, they increase the costs to persons, to the businesses who are going to then pass the costs back to the society. Right? So they're not fixing the problems.
Right.
You have warrants,
Yeah.
as an example. Warrants is not, there's no central place of warrants for transportation. The Warrens terminal is the bus stop by the polyclinic.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the unofficial Warrens terminal.
Yeah.
Beer confusion at
See
different
many people.
times. Beer confusion. The fellas want to fight one another.
Correct.
Police out there reporting them.
Yeah.
People can't cross the road in peace.
Yeah.
You know, and so they have not done anything to really move a lot of these sectors forward. Right? We're at a standstill.
If you ever go in this Pointstown terminal on a Sunday, those people suffer. People on the north, for example, they suffer. You see between 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock, those people suffer. If you gotta get to White Hill,
But and to me, 9 o'clock is so early. 9 p.m. is early.
Not in the rural area.
To not get a bus.
Yeah.
Can't get transport. I mean, any
we
form
go
of
back to the
transportation.
1960s and 70s when the last bus was 11. Back there.
So transportation is a very important issue, and the traffic congestion is not only limited to the amount of buses and the terminals, but how do we organize our schedules and work days and that sort of stuff. We still hustling at the same time. We're still trying to get to school at the same time. We're still trying to do everything in the same way that we've done it for the last 50 years.
I can ask a silly question here, based on what I've heard so far. Can the parents afford, based on all the taxes and fuel, etc., can they afford to send to school the children?
Can afford to send them to school?
They have no choice.
Listen. At the end of the day, if it's one thing a parent is going to do, it's going to afford to send school the children.
Yes.
They are going to take personal sacrifices. And if you are a parent yourself, you would know personally. I can't even explain the sort of sacrifice that parents do. I can't do it. Sacrifice that I saw my mother made for children, right? Because that is will bring tears to your eyes. So we do what we have to do as parents, as a society, and that is the problem. Sometimes people then feel that everything is fine because you know what? On September the 14th, Monday, new shoes, new bike, and a new shirt, and everybody say, "Oh, everybody happy." Barbados is one happy place. But when you get home, that shirt we're going to put behind the fridge. We're going back to them days, where persons cannot afford to have 4 or 5 uniforms anymore, right? But you don't see the struggle, and we don't speak about the struggle, but the struggle is real. When you have a situation where all of the charitable organizations and I can use this word loosely, or I cannot use the word, all the charitable organizations have been in the media space, sharing how much above and beyond that they have been going,
Yes.
especially in 2024,
Yeah.
2.5 years strong after COVID, right? Where economy is fully open and fully operating to support families.
Yes.
To support families. But it is a silent pain that parents are sacrificing.
Still got pride.
Pride and dignity. And we do everything, but we sacrifice and we burn it.
Yeah. Well, you led the fight where the lowering of the fuel. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you for that.
Oh, well, listen.
Champion.
At the end of the day, right, I think it is a reflection point in 2024 for me as I came into the Senate and my whole experience in terms of, it was just thinking about going in the Senate. If you sit down and assess the kind of responsibility that person will have on you, given the situation to the party not having seats and the party going through its turmoil about who should lead and who is the better person to sit in the House and to sit in the Senate, and pressure. So it was a grueling time on a person's mind. Right? I'll be honest, some people might not want to share this story, right? But it was a grueling time to try to see how you can fit into this whole puzzle. Right? My philosophy has always been is to represent the people of the country, but do it from the basis of information, facts, and education, where you can, right? It is unconscionable that a government that has the ability to improve the law, to put more money in people's pockets, would not do it. But will use the opportunity to rake in millions of dollars because of their bad management, their bad policy, and their misallocation of funds. So all I told myself is that don't matter what
They say.
if they say I ain't stopping, if they do not say I ain't stopping because it is wrong. The Democratic Party came to office in 2008 and corrected the large deficits that were at the national oil company.
Yes.
They put a mechanism in place that they thought was fair to the consumers. We are going to give all of the stakeholders in this chain a fair piece of the pie. A retailer is going to get X, a distributor is going to get X, the government is going to get X, and the consumer is going to get X. It might not be fair. It might need a reassessing, but at the point, it was supposed to be allocation fair. And what was fair about it is that allowed that on times of benefit, you would benefit.
Everybody benefit.
I would benefit. Small businessman would benefit. At the times when there will be pain and frustration, everybody will take a little piece. And we have, so over the last, from 2008, then 15 years, that has how the country has operated as it relates to diesel and gasoline at the pump. Up comes this government. Prices spiked. They spoke about all the caps and VAT and all that we really don't know how much they save consumers, if they did save consumers at all, because the process is still not transparent. But what they've done over the last 18 months is to go back to a system where they lock us out of the benefits that the Democratic Labour Party put in place for the people of this country. So you hear the last decade.
Yeah.
It's just vindictive.
But
They're just a vindictive government.
they did that because they put themselves in the whole financial taxpayers in the whole financially to say, hey,
Whatever we do is then.
and not only that, we have put the country in a hole where we have to look for $1 billion. We have to look for $1 billion to pay our bills. So we have to now find ways to get. I calculated because we do not have any information that is shared with the public, but I calculated that could be as much as $60 million that they have raked in by not adjusting down the prices over that 18-month period in that way. Significant revenue taken from consumers.
But the garbage tax was supposed to be temporary too.
So Ramon, it is something that as a party we need to support. Once we support our positions with facts, we might not always be right, but we can create a discussion. Once we are protecting consumers, the government has to come and say if we are right or we're wrong,
Right.
and then we can have the discussion. And they still willing to have the discussion because there's much more in that situation. In this situation now with this gasoline, there's much more in it because you have to know where they're purchasing the gasoline from, how much it's costing, and if there are not better alternatives. Because there's no way that the price of a barrel of oil is $70 US, $75 US a barrel. That's 140 Barbados dollars. And then you've got to do the refining process and so forth. And you go buy a barrel from another entity for $280 Barbados. Something is wrong. Something is wrong. But again,
Different size barrel.
we talk about we spoke about accountability, Felicia.
Yeah.
We spoke about accountability. And we have a minister of energy and business who is not a representative of the people.
Okay.
Very important. So how I see it is that she doesn't owe it to the people of Barbados.
Right.
Because she doesn't have to do like myself. I knock on the door and say I would like your support.
Right.
That's how I see it. Because it is a serious issue, has never been addressed. It has never been addressed in such a way that we just can feel comfortable that the government has the best interest at heart. Right? So we have some more issues in 2025 where we will dive into and we will hold the government accountable. And it's not about politics, it's about reality. Because $60 million from taxpayers in that short period of time is a significant amount of money that we can have in our pockets.
Yeah, that's maybe where the home money made.
And it was interesting they called it garbage tax.
Yeah,
The garbage is correct.
Yeah.
The 60 million, where do you think that is allocated to? Where is it going?
Well, we can only assume. And as I said, I think that we know that the government has to find at least, I think it was last reported, almost $400 million in cash to pay its bills. So what they're doing, they have to get money fast. The government is in a cash flow crisis. Corporations in this country now have to prepare tax every month. Every month. You will prepare tax twice a year on a norm. But you're asking businesses now to prepare from the first. You know that you won't make a cent yet. You will make a cent in business. First month, slowest month of the year is January. But you got to prepare tax based on the previous year's net profit. Every month. So an administrative effort is going to disadvantage our small businesses too, because there might be penalties and so forth.
Yes.
But it is an example of the cash crunch that the government is in. They're going to grab at everything. They're going to grab at inflation. So don't expect the prices to come down, because the most growth that this government has had is on goods and services. Goods, because the price of goods go up. And that means the VAT revenue and the VAT intake goes up also. And again, if I'm invited back, I will go through some of the numbers in terms of the contributions to GDP, because there's a lot in there, a lot of misinformation. But we can just look at the facts. We can listen to the noise. We can look at the facts. Right? Yeah.
So I know you mentioned so many different taxes. Just to purchase one item. How many taxes are just to purchase one item from the seller to the buyer? How many taxes you would say in between?
It's a big system, because you're importing everything. You got duties, excise tax, some levies. It is an interesting question, and it is one that the academics need to get involved in terms of what is the best, or is there a better way to manage this? Is it a better way for the government to get revenue versus is it a better way to tax persons as well, right? And one of the things, and why I say that is because it is very difficult for the government. It is very difficult, for consumers to benefit from adjustment in taxes because they do the policy, but it's championed by the businesses. We have the NSRL. The government in 2018 bought off the NSRL, but we did not see prices come down. No. So they can argue that they did their job, but it did not pass down, trickle down. The savings did not trickle down, right? So it's not only about the policy, but it's the management of the policy, right? For all my, I cannot remember for my adult life if I have seen a company, and Derek might be able to correct me, have seen a company brought before the law courts for price gouging. I don't. These are things that we have, mechanisms that we have, not to price control, but to regulate, right? To regulate on behalf of consumers.
We can tell that when Bradford was in the stage trying to price control regime, and he almost lost his life.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but we're not talking about price control. We're talking about regulation. We're talking about making sure that persons, that if you give a benefit to be passed on to consumers, that it is passed on.
The general point with making a one should interfere with business people in our business.
Yes, and
they come at you. They come at you, right?
So to me, going back to my original point, it speaks there to the policies and how you structure the taxation, right? That will allow everything to flow. Because one of the other things that the government did when they came in is they wrote off VAT, millions of dollars of VAT. So it's not unfair to you and I who would have gone into these establishments, patronized them, paid in our VAT because the prices are VAT inclusive, but we know they now owe the government, and the government says you don't have to pay me. You can keep that.
You keep that.
So that is an injustice to us, and that's an injustice to us where we're also facing now a barrel of deficits every year. I mean, that could be money that we could be collected over a period of time. Right, being fair to
they didn't even say that we extend payment period for the one outstanding one, we reduce the amount,
and the interest and all that. Keep it. It was millions of dollars. I can't remember right now.
And then turn nationals on and decreasing that pension age and all that. Right?
So the taxation policy is something that it's time now that we take a look at it to see how do we fix these things so that when adjustments are made, consumers are not negatively impacted and they're benefited.
Right? I saw an article, borrow Labour Party. yes, borrow Labour Party. You know? I'll be borrowing from all angles, all directions, everything.
So the headline into this paper says that you want to borrow local now.
Yes.
So you know what I mean?
Not local.
But you see, it is almost like you are borrowing to fill your deficit, but you have to find creative ways to trick the system because you're writing off debt, and you're saying in 1 month you're saying we have now taken some high interest debt and we are going to recalculate it and buy low interest debt. So you are going to save. The consumers, taxpayers are going to save. But then 2 days after they send this newspaper, you will see treasury bills or some financial instrument, 250 million or so, at a high interest. They're offered at a high interest. So you're not going to, yes, right now high interest, but then you're not offering about high interest because they need money. And who's going to take up that debt? The central bank of Barbados. The central bank now is maybe not printing money per se, but if they take up the debt, is equivalent to printing money. Right? So it's a lot of fancy footwork, as we call it. Fancy footwork that is happening to kind of give the government cash. But as they get the more cash, as they get the cash, we are not seeing any tangible things then. Schools in UK, roads, problems, garbage, same thing, transportation. We are not seeing a transformation that we expect given the high level of debt. Now remember, when in 2018 May, I think the debt was about 14.2 billion. At September 2024, the debt was still 14.2 billion. After working down our national insurance and our pensions and so forth, after working that down, right? So you can see now the kind of borrowing of debt to put us back in the same debt position, but we have not seen the benefit and we have not been feeling the benefit in the society.
The governor is central, but he has been doing a lot of acting recently.
Yeah, he got series
Acting
now.
twice. Yeah, brother.
Yeah, he's got a series on TV.
A lot of acting.
He has a series now, but it is
It's unfortunate.
it's unfortunate.
Yes,
It's unfortunate. One of the other areas before maybe talk about that is that one of the bragging points of the government, Ryan Strong, Charlie Blackman, they got face chat every Senate talking about foreign reserves. So Senator Blackman boasts about foreign reserves. And there's an international benchmark. I think that is 15 weeks, I believe. 12 weeks. Right, 12 weeks. We are at 31 weeks consistently for about 2.5 years now. I have calculated what that costs Barbados. Again, do it next time I come on the show. But it is costing taxpayers. It is sexy to say it, but it comes at a cost. The rationale is that the government or the central bank or whoever calculates the average weeks cover, and if the benchmark is 12 weeks, they try to have 12 weeks. Nothing is wrong with saying that we believe that we should have 18 weeks or 16 weeks or whatever, but to have 31 weeks for such a long period of time sustained, it is costing us significant amount of money in interest. Significant. And I've calculated. I'm not going to say the numbers because I don't have it here today, but if I am allowed back, I would do the I would bring the calculations and show what it's actually costing, because it is reckless, especially given the financial position the government has this country in. It is reckless. Right. So those are some of the things that we will raise over the course of the next couple of months, especially leading up to the budget.
I have a question though, in terms of, I think the Prime Minister was speaking on minimum wages. Has any update has been done on that in terms of having minimum wages? And I do believe that one of the workers union representative, Tony Moore, minister, right, spoke on that. What has been the outcome? Because if we were talking about all of those debt and it comes back on citizens, we would expect that there is something for citizens, at least the average Barbadian would have, a good salary coming home. What was the discussion? Because I remember the Prime Minister did speak that they were working on having a minimum wage for Barbados. And I've seen other Caribbean islands are doing that. So are they considering?
No, we have a minimum wage.
Yes, but
No, Derek, let me correct you. We do not have a minimum wage.
Yes.
We have a minimum wage rate.
Okay.
A rate which says that you have to pay $8.50 per hour. It's a rate. I can use back a word that you used earlier, hypocrisy. Because
I know workers have got less work now.
Because the
reduce the hours.
The same MP that you referred to
correct.
supported the minimum wage rate implementation. I have always argued that we do not have a minimum wage because a wage is rate times hours.
Right.
And if you don't have a specific target set hours, you don't have a target set rate.
One comes with the other.
One comes with the other. So I'm saying now, so a person I cannot get employment and say I'm going to carry home $500 a week. I can say I'm going to get $8.50 an hour.
Right.
And I'm at the mercy of the employer. Right? It is a delicate balance that we have to establish, but it has to be established if we are seriously thinking about a minimum wage. Because then the same hypocrisy is coming out when the leader of the union, who's an MP, is accusing the business this week
Of
of paying $8.50, but giving less hours.
Wait.
She's not fighting in Parliament, in the legislation to enact these things to make sure it happens.
Mhm.
But she's not fighting for membership. So she's wearing two hats, and there's a
Right.
conflict.
You see, but when he said so, because all the other minimum wage regimes gave hours. They gave hours. Like the domestic rate, I used to be for 44 hours, that amount.
Right.
And the the minimum shops raised
Yeah.
rate was for these amount of hours, right? And the questions about reducing hours down to 26, and I think that needs to happen.
Right.
As a matter of fact, people should get overtime.
Mm.
Yeah, right?
And we think, I believe that it's a good opportunity to have that discussion, to
Yes.
hold the government to account
Yeah.
that we need that, because ministers are making the money. They have the pensions and everything else they have aligned for themselves. And the average Barbadian, they can barely take something home to sustain their families. And I think it's an important discussion. So it asks the question that you said, is there a loyalty to party, or is it a loyalty to the people? So,
It's only to
and
the
these are the
people
kind,
where
so
they
if you
need
are,
membership.
yes,
where you need the
right,
membership,
so you
or where you
really,
need election, because in the but not the cost inflation, but in the budget of 2024 to 2025, the Prime Minister promised an increase in the minimum wage.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I
It hasn't
remember
come
that.
yet.
2026.
2027.
But
So things are important to us, or to people, working class people
yes,
especially,
yes,
are not coming through.
yes.
They're not flowing.
You know, this government gave a 5% increase the first year it came. This is 6 years now. And not a word from the unions. Not a word from the unions.
And I think that's what, that's, we need to agitate, and
Yes.
continue on behalf of the people, and I think that's what it is, and I think that's what we need to tell Barbadians, that you need to watch your bread and see what is happening, because you have people that are supposed to be defending your rights, but you're defending their friends and their family and their associates. And it's very important that while you're trying to struggle and make ends meet, the basic needs, you can't meet the basic needs. You can't make the basic needs for your children. We're seeing what is happening. We're seeing in terms of, look at the increase in robberies and assaults. And, there's an increase in those types of crimes. And these are the kinds of realities that we really need we need to agitate. As a party that has always empowered people, we need to think about agitating this government to put it in writing, that we need a minimum wage for our average Barbadian. They deserve it. They deserve it.
We need. We talk about transportation discussion.
Yes.
Labor is a
Welcome,
labor. Because I canvassed yesterday there,
Seriously.
and I came up with a young man working in government for about 4 years. 6-month contracts, 8-month contracts,
yes.
and he said, my Ryan, I tell the truth, I really wanted for Christmas to buy a little bed and sign up to bring up something for the house. Could not get it. Cannot get a job letter. Can't get credit. And this is injustice. 4 years working in government, 4 years in the government institution. I cannot have proper, decent employment. And that's something that we have to look at, because it is not right.
Another shortcoming is that there are cases that have been sent to the employment rights tribunal for about 5 years, have not been heard, and people, the Attorney General comes to this office, he's been home now 2 years, cannot get his case heard, and his family, many less. He got to depend on people to help his family, and the tribunal has ignored all of his pleas. I spoke to another trade union leader, and he's been making an effort to see what he can do. But the chairman resigned somewhat. I think the minister's last words that he's trying to get a paid secretariat. Them is bringing consultants every week. Every week, someone be a new consultant. You got a man who was consultant for the minister of Youth Affairs. Right? He's the consultant for the minister of Youth Affairs. The minister get moved to the environment, and he's still the consultant.
Friends and family. But it's something that we really have to do, because one of the things that we know is that all of these families have children. They have persons to support, and I think you really need to look deeply into that and see why parents are struggling, why families are struggling. And this party, this Barbados Labour Party need to put families first. They need to look at what the family structure, and the family structure is really suffering at this point. And we're seeing it in every facet of society. And I think it's important that we have always agitated on the rights of people, the rights of workers, the rights of children, the rights of parents, the rights of teachers, that we need to start having those conversations. And many of those government ministers, as I said before, it seems like as if they have a loyalty to one person and not to the people of Barbados. And that loyalty is what is, it's going to be a detriment to the future of this country, because we need to serve our people, because as mortal beings, when we're no longer here, what can we say? We spend all that time and all those resources on one person so that person could be flying all over the world and not providing the kinds of intervention that we need for our people. I think it's very important that we take some time, particularly this is a new year, and I think they need to do that. They need to take some introspective and see, what am I doing as an individual? I'm a minister of government, I'm a representative, I'm an MP for an area. Who am I representing? Am I representing the people? Because obviously the people are crying out. They call in our offices, they call in us to act on their behalf while you are there to serve them. They voted for you, and it is your responsibility to do that. So it's very disappointing in some cases, but it also, we're at a state of despair. People are afraid of victimization. They do not want to speak up because they fear that their jobs will be taken away from them, the hours or something, or the MP may not give them the Christmas ham.
Yep.
And things of that nature. It's very important that we. It's very sad. Or they will not be invited to the Christmas parties, or they will not have the Christmas on the fest.
Don't laugh that.
Because it's the reality. It's the reality.
That's normal thing.
It's the reality that we have, that the funding is being spent on those activities, those fun, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I think there's so much more important issues, because our children have to be back in those school environments. Our children, our parents, our young persons, they need protection. There's no social protection at this point. Ask yourself, how many persons right now will feel safe at a van stand right now, or a bus stop, after what they've seen? The anxiety, the fear, because the government failed to provide social protection for their people. And so these are the real issues that we have to be discussing. Not every week we see ministers in a party in effect jamming and all of these things. We like that, but there's a time for seriousness and discipline. It can be all year round. Because when I saw the picture of the Prime Minister in Botanical Gardens, I thought it was still Christmas. Because I'm saying that I thought usually around Christmas time you'd have those Christmas parties. This is January, and we're still having Christmas parties. So what does that say?
Always got the horse in front.
So
there are other MPs that have had Christmas parties last week. And then they saw flyers for some other MPs and prospective MPs at the Barbados Day party hanging up, having parties too.
So we're having Christmas parties in January, plus we gathering.
We used to have Christmas parties in the newspapers. Christmas party is a little constituency matter that stays in the constituency. You don't need people, children in the paper to say that they make the Christmas party.
Yeah, we put the balloon around your head.
I mean, it's a big thing.
Yes, and that's what good governance looks like now. That let's see how much fetch we can have in our constituency, how much press we can have, and all of these things. So that's where part of the consulting fee comes in, and we gathering and all of these other things.
Don't let me go.
But it is a reality that when you look at the struggles of the average parent, the struggles that they have to go through and make sure that the children have to go and be in a school environment, only for them to go to the school and get that kind of meal while we're fetching all over the place. And our children cannot sit in an environment and have a decent meal. No, this is the reality. We have to be upset about these things.
Proper facility.
We have to agitate about it. We have to be upset. I think Barbadians as a people have to realize that we have to stand up and make our voices be heard. We can't always be very passive about those matters, because when we're passive, it's almost as if we're normalizing that kind of behavior. So we see all these parties and fetting and everything. We can't say much, because if we say, then we may get repercussions out of it, or some vindictive minister might decide not to give us the bed or the table that we need. And these are the realities that we need to. There are very serious concerns. Our country is at a state of despair. We can see it, we can feel it. And we need to be honest with ourselves and speak the truth and share our experiences. These are real experiences that people are having. Our children are telling us, this is what we're having for meals. This is their reality as well. The children are seeing it. And we just cannot continue on those
I don't think I can walk away here
journeys.
and don't remind Barbadians that there's still discrimination in the fishing force business.
Yes.
And Labor officers will be upset
Yes.
if we did make a plea again that we have some fishing folks who have received not one blue cent,
And Christmas has passed.
and they have been registered with the association, with the ministry. And that young lady from your constituency, she's been a fishing folk all her life. She registered, and not one cent. And you know why? You know why they've been treating her. You know why they're treating her. So when you say the discrimination, because if they didn't pay me with red money, maybe everybody would get. But then we don't got the red $1 anymore. $100 bill now it's all bluish. So they're not giving out any blue money. They're going, So and the young lady, all her life in fishing for, she had received not one single cent. And then they say they're discrimination. But some people who are not even fishing for, who run errands in the market, who come and go and buy a drink for people, 6 weeks. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Well, I ain't let it rest, because they know the leading officer is not going to let it rest.
Okay, good.
And we're going to be on it every week, as long as we get the show on. We're going to be back on that.
Yes. But it sounds to me, based on everyone's communication, that the government currently has an aloof, that they have aloof priorities, right? We are more concerned about foreign reserves, etc., when the ordinary Barbadian is smelling health, right?
Climate change.
And climate change, right? So it is very important, very horrible, and I think we got to get it dealt with in a serious way, right? Yes. So we have the party has some activities coming up, right? Some serious activities coming up, really educational. The first one is the Memorial Church Service. That's the first one, and that is on the 20th of January at 10 a.m. The 20th of January, 10 a.m. Then there is a Monday, also Monday the 20th of January as well. We have the memorial lecture, and a memorial lecture that will be done by the Honorable Mr. Ralph Thorne. And then we have some cricket on the 21st of January. That will be at the North Stars Ground at 1 p.m.
We gathering money for that too. We gathering money for that. I wonder, you think, Senator,
Should be sponsored.
should be sponsored part of the gathering?
And my apologies. The church service is on the 19th of January,
Sunday.
10 a.m.
St. John.
And that is
St. John.
St. John. That is correct.
Witness Church. Maybe church.
That's the Messiah Wesleyan Holiness Church. This is the surgery. St. John. That is correct. Yes. And the lecture is the Earl Wharton Barrow Center for Creative Imagination, UV Cave Hill campus. Cave Hill campus. Yes. Yes. The topic. Here. There. Go. Right. The vision, the mission, from a village to a nation. The vision, the mission, from a village to a nation. Yes. So lots of activities coming up, and I'm looking forward to see everyone come out and have a really good time. So yes, any last words from any of my panelists as we conclude?
Thank you again for the invitation. Very good discussion. Looking forward to more visits to the Dlp Tv, where we can dive into some of the issues that hopefully Felicia did very well earlier in terms of education. As you said, we have transportation, we have finance, we have construction, labor, housing, Also, for sure, I will be back. I will pick a topic and come armed to share with Barbados what the realities of the situation is. Amidst all the noise and all the PR that the government has used or is using and has at its disposal. So thanks again for the invitation, and wishing all Barbados a good night.
Yes. Well, thank you again, and I just want to remind Barbadians, especially parents and teachers, that we are here to support you. You can reach out to us. I have sneakers now. I have a new pair of sneakers, so I will be out there, and to ensure that everything is being done the way that you are, that it's required for you. We have your interests at heart. We will continue to remain honest with you, and we expect that you remain honest with us as well. We are here to support you. If we believe that we need to work harder, we will continue to work hard on your behalf. But I also want you to remain safe, remain vigilant. There's a lot that's happening in our society. Ensure that you're not alone at times, especially for women as well, and for young persons. So continue the hard work. I will continue to agitate. But most importantly, remain vigilant with this government. Watch your bread. They're not playing. They're coming to get everything that you work hard for themselves. So we will continue to be there for you.
Just want to say thanks for having me co-host. I've never been a host of anything. First, I'm a person who can't keep quiet. So it's not an easy thing, but I think that we address the issues, we put them on the table, we discuss them. I think the opposition has been making every effort to keep Barbadians alert of all the issues around them. The leader of the opposition continues to be the fighter in the parliament against all the odds. But I'm telling you that people are watching parliament again because of his effort. And I know the two senators have had the Senate miserable.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for having me again. Anytime.
I want to thank all the panel members. It was extremely robust, very informative. And, just to mention, we have a public meeting on the 19th of January, 2025. Right? Location and so forth, that will be communicated going forward. And they'll be hosted by the Young Democrats. The Young Democrats. So I just want to thank all the viewers. I want to thank my team.
Yes.
We had exceptional. Over 300 viewers. Wow, fantastic. Fantastic, yes. So I want to thank everyone for taking some time out to obviously
Join us further. We will look forward in seeing you in all our activities. Remember, it's Error Bar Week. They're trying to diminish our legacy. So please show out, come out and be there and represent. This is Errol Bauer's week. We have to show up for him as he did for us.
That's correct. And this is Dlp TV. Honest voices for the people.
Good night.
Good night.